Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 66 Think Tank. Well, that's off to a great start, isn't it? Welcome to the 66 Think Tank with me, Joshua Radford, Chris Tregenza, Kristen Hunt, and Dr. Mark Foster, M. Fizz. Show off. All right. Luckily, this week we're doing one where we can allow Emily to do horrible things, but she's not here. So no matter how horrible we're going to get, it's never going to be as bad as when Emily's around. To find out what that means, subscribe to our channel and go look at our previous videos, where you'll see that Emily King is the queen of nightmare fuel, no matter how nice we try and make it. So today's topic will be births, deaths and marriages, and how these important milestones can affect the role-playing session, and or plot hooks. So, I believe I will pass on to Chris for the main bulk of the meeting. No, who's doing sign-ins? Oh, it's been a long week, forgive me.
It's Mark.
Mark, do the sign-ins, please.
Okay, I shall do the check-ins. I will start with myself because I'm already talking. Had a week of largely being ill, so if I cough and splutter repeatedly throughout this, then that's why. Yeah, other than that, okay, getting back into work, which is not a huge amount of fun. It's interesting exciting to get back to your desk after 3 weeks off and try to remember anything whatsoever. So, yeah, been mostly doing that. Chris, how about you?
Yes, it's been a pretty good week. Work continues, which is a good thing, and I've had a good chat with the person which I'm pretty confident is going to become the 66 Hellenic artist. Not going to say too much just yet, but we should have some news on that in the next week or two. So yeah, good positive week.
Cool, glad to hear it. Glad to hear the Hellenic is sort of pressing on now for the Kickstarter. Josh, how about you? How are your projects going?
Stalling currently and over the verge of. I have been so goddamn busy at work, I've had no time to do anything. Hence why I completely buggered up the intro. Because I'm only just awake currently. I've not had a cup of tea and or cheesecake. Otherwise, can't really complain too much because, hey, we've had a lot of sun this week. That's always a good thing, even if I don't get to see it.
Yeah, I'd say spring finally sprung, so hopefully it's going to stay warm now for the rest of the next couple of months. So finally getting with you, Kristen. How are you doing? How's your last week been?
It's been pretty good considering, role playing has happened. Like I finally got back to role playing after being exhausted. And weather-wise, over here in the USA, for some reason, it's decided to be like 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're in spring. We had like a week where it was, like 70 degrees. You know what? I'm going to go find out what the conversion is for that. So when all of you are like, Fahrenheit, Celsius, what?
I think 50 is about 12 degrees C and 70's getting up to about 20 degrees, I think. But I'm just sort of ballparking it.
That's why I'm checking. Celsius. It's 58 today, so we're looking at 14.44 degrees Celsius? I will never understand.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Colder than room temperature.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, but that's warm for us here. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's gonna. Well, hey, when you consider that, we spent a couple of weeks ago, or last week, we had a day where it was 26 degrees Celsius outside, so it's a big drop.
Yeah, well, it's the weather. It does that. So yeah. Cool. I'm glad to hear that it's starting to go well starting to go well in your neck of the woods. So I think I'll pass over to Chris now, so we can get into the main bulk of the meeting.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, so tonight's topic of discussion and brainstorming is births, marriages and deaths, or hatches, matches and dispatches, as they are also called. So these three great life events, often the cause of celebrations or religious rites, and so what we're looking about tonight is plot hooks to do with those great events. So, things which can suck the party in and tie them to either a birth or a wedding or a funeral. So we're going to start off with Josh. Josh, what have you got in mind?
An adventure called A Birth in Shadow. So the party have been adventured together for a while now. I imagine this be barely mid-level adventure. I've been tasked by a client to protect a very secretive client. And this lady is heavily pregnant. But they don't know anything about her, and she refuses to talk to the party about who she is. But she'll quite gladly follow them. So as they move from place to place, they're attacked by ever-increasingly more dangerous enemies. Even the most feared and most dangerous orc hit squad, the Tuskers. After a bit of prodding and, come on, seriously, tell us who you are, turns out she's the queen, or former queen in this instance. The queen was cast out when the Mad Mage, Arazad Shalanor, seized power and remade the capital city of Phalanx in his own image. The reason that he wants her dead so badly is if she gives birth, the bargain he made with the reality warping demon who he gained power from is null and void. So he thinks, oh, one pregnant lady's not going to be an issue, so he sends something off they never brought back and keeps sending more and more increasingly powerful things. And they're getting quite dangerous for the players to take on. And it all culminates in one final stand where literally the queen is giving birth and the things that shouldn't even exist are starting to attack the players because he does not want this baby being born.
Oh, I like that. You know, I love the idea of that sort of like final scene where the party are defending somewhere in a room, and inside the room there's someone actively giving birth, and also a question of that can last hours and days even. So that sort of like gives an interesting sort of time limit. And I was also thinking that are the players going to have to act as midwives as well?
Raw heel check. And one of the players going to have to stay in there with her. I imagine this is a great one to end the session with, and she starts going to labour. So the next session, the whole next session is just dedicated to you protecting the queen as she gives birth. Just one map, tons of enemies. It's an Iron Man gauntlet essentially.
Yeah, I just love the idea that the sort of like the players have got to fight the battle and sort of during one round they've got to run back into the room quickly, cast a heal spell or something or just fetch some hot water, then leg it back out and rejoin the battle. I think the situation gives some interesting dynamics to the combat.
It's a great one to test just how tactically the players can think. Oh, that flank's unprotected. Wall of iron. You there. Go barbarian. Go just screw everybody up over there. Get them to attack you. It's a case of everybody has to work together. No showboating. No going it alone. You have to work together. This is...
So it's basically an MMO trial where the tank has to keep aggro or else everything is going to collapse because the healer can't keep them off. And once the healer gets aggro, everyone's dead.
Aggro is a very technical term. Basically translates to the priest dies.
Yep. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it is just it's a climax to an adventure. This kid is giving birth. Has been born even.
Yeah.
I'm not
the kid's not giving birth. Yes.
I am not on form tonight.
No, you're doing wonderfully.
Yes. Although that does beg the question: does the actual act of the child crying undo its first breath, undo the reality warping?
Yeah, because I'm not sure the specifics behind the actual contract, but if this kid exists, it just nullifies everything that Arazad promised. Thus, the contract is now null and void. Reality Demon goes, no, I'm not going to work with you now. Unmake everything, because as we know, demons are quite fickle creatures. Mark, the Kobayashi Maroon.
Yeah, so this is a scenario that the players are meant to ultimately win.
For intents and purposes, yeah.
Rate. Just how long can you keep the pregnant woman alive?
It's a case of it's one of those moments I imagine would divide a story. It's like if you succeed, story goes one way. If you fail, story goes another. There's always a way to solve the problem. I don't believe in full dead ends. There's always a way to solve it.
Okay.
But you bring up an interesting point there in sort of like, yeah, if it's sort of if it looks like actually the players could lose, do the players then think, well, we could just hand over the pregnant woman, we could just walk away? You know, depending on the alignment of the morality of the party, you could actually get some interesting role-playing situations where, you know, they're bargaining for their lives.
Yeah. I'll roll with that. That's what I can say to that point, unfortunately.
Something else which occurred to me while you were describing it, you know, obviously giving birth is, you know, it's highly symbolic, you know, and obviously if you want to go for the most symbolic birth, you talk about Jesus, and you know, you've got a whole situation in the barn and, you know, the manger and things like that, and of course the famous, you know, the priests standing, the three wise kings and the shepherds standing around baby Jesus in the manger, and that sort of icon view. And I just have the vision of sort of like the end of the adventure. There's this sort of like the baby sort of, you know, sort of in the manger or whatever, the trough they've just found in his barn, and the players standing around, blood splattered and torn, bodies scattered all over the place.
Oh my god!
And some sort of like juxtaposed to the biblical story.
That's great.
Love it.
Also, kind of horrible. You know. Especially if the labor goes on for days, not just talking about hours, but days. Then you have to wonder, then do you give the players a concession because, you know, they're going to get tired? Or do you send more monsters at them because that's exactly what the bad guy would do. Oh, hey, wait, their strength is flagging. Layer on more monsters!
It also depends where the players choose to fortify, I suppose. I mean, they're not going to send the monsters constantly. They're going to be breaks in between the monsters getting there, or being sent and getting there. So they might have to take it in turns to rest.
I mean, you can play with the scenario in a couple of ways. You could make it a lot more sort of like a standalone session-based things, where they just come across, you know, they're at a lonely inn, and there's just this heavily pregnant woman, and she's starting to go into labour, and she asks the players to protect them. You know, she comes up out front. You know, if I give birth, you know, the city is saved from terrible magics, so they're honor bound to defend it. So you can make it actually quite a short encounter. You know, and it's just one session of them being constantly attacked or surrounded by a huge army or something like that.
As long as it's not one of those living inns we created last week, you should be all right.
Yeah. The other thing where you could mess it up, as Kristen was saying about the length of time, you know, the players give, you know, agree to this. Oh yeah, you're going to give birth, a few hours. We're just going to guard it overnight. Well, you don't mention that actually she's an elf and the whole process takes a week, or you know, or you do throw some sort of complicating factor which throws the players' plans out.
Yeah, go with that.
Okay, so I think that's it for A Birth in Shadow. Thank you, Josh. Mark, let's turn to you and your idea for a running wedding.
Yeah, so this one I want to make slightly lighter. The kind of idea for the setting, I imagine it's sort of like 18th century or kind of German states. So it's all fragmented, lots of individual states, and it kind of wants to set the technology level as well and the visual style, let's say the 18th century. So with this one, the players have been tasked with protecting a noble wedding, which is going to bring a lasting union between two big princely states, and then creates the basis for a kind of a lasting peace, kind of in the region, as the two families and the two kind of regions unite. But there's plenty of players who don't want that wedding taking place. So there's going to be lots of assassination attempts, a lot of attempts on the wedding. And the kind of list of people I had is that there's at least 2 other local powers don't want it to happen. There's a bank, there's an arms manufacturer, and a faction in the church doesn't want this wedding to happen. And so each of those people are going to have a go at some point during the adventure. So the intention is that someone has to start before the wedding, trying to kill, let's say, one or both of the 2 people, so they have to be protected in the night, protect them on the way to the wedding itself, and then someone tries to storm the wedding whilst it's going on. So it's similar to Josh's one in that you're trying to protect some process that's taking place. In this case, it's the wedding. The problem is partway through, the bishop stabs the groom. And if the players don't catch that, then actually that's okay, because their boss turns up and says, don't worry, these two weren't actually the bride and groom anyway. We figured this was going to happen. They're in a carriage heading off the other way. Go after them. And so one of the kind of like 18th century Mad Max sort of sequences, they kind of go off across the countryside to get to to get to a port with these two in there. And I can't quite decide whether I want the wedding to be taking place in the carriage as they're going. They've got to go fend people off as they go. And then eventually they kind of get there, get onto a ship to take them away to elsewhere, say take them to the honeymoon. And then they have to kind of defend the ship and so on kind of as it goes. So we've got this kind of running fight. Sorry. You've got this running fight as you go along trying to defend this wedding, with the twist partway through that you think you've failed. Actually turns out that's not really the groom. This is all just a distraction. So I want to make it a fairly, again, quite a light adventure in tone, even though it's actually quite dark. You're trying to prevent people from being killed, but you're, I say, it's just that kind of continual running chaos.
It's that sort of farce element of it. I mean, you've got those films those 1960s, 70s films like The Wonderful Men in Their Flying Machines, and also sort of later on the sort of like things like Convoy and stuff like that, where you just get these silly, basically hour-long chase movies where lots of teams or groups competing after the MacGuffin and lots of strangeness and things happen. I could just see that. I just love the idea of a wedding taking place on carriages going down this road, a whole chain of them, and maybe like the groom, but the ring is in another carriage, so they've got to sort of like manoeuvre the two carriages next to each other and pass the ring over so the wedding can go ahead.
Well, she's in one and he's in the other. You've got to run them kind of both side by side so they can reach across the gap to.
Now kiss the bride. Watch out for the tree. Josh.
The way you described that, it's just giving me the best mental image ever. 18th century carriage chase. Well, everybody's dressed in the exact costumes like Mad Max, so leather, spikes, chains. Just the absurdity of that image is just the greatest thing ever.
There's a leather frock coats and spiked tricorns, that kind of thing.
It's just, so I was like, and what had occurred to me during what you were saying, Chris, is what if one of the players is a cleric and they have to perform the wedding? You have to keep rolling perform checks. Like, can you get the vows right? 1. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, you could throw in things like maybe the bride or the groom get befuddled, so they can't repeat the oath, and so the players are sort of going to slap them around their face until they sort of remember. Kristen, you've got some thoughts of a cultural reference I know we all share.
Yes, The Princess Bride. Why not? Actually, though, ABC's miniseries Galahad had a moment of this where the bad guy, he's not a bad guy, but the stereotypical villain dude is standing there, and the bride, who is like the former girlfriend of the main hero, he makes this comment, and she's like, "No, I'll take the riches and the fame," in like a weird way. And it was like, what? Like, so maybe something unusual could happen where the bride, instead of deciding to marry the groom, she's the bad guy. Like, just completely tells the groom to go jump off a bridge. And it's like, nope, I'm taking this bad guy. He's my husband now. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, you could play maybe, just as one of the things, maybe the oaths get mixed up, maybe the priest is like in Princess Bride, or the priest is a bit befuddled or whatever else, and gets the oath wrong and marries the wrong people, or the bride, ends up, the groom swears to obey the bride, but not the other way around, and so she's going to now become the monarch and things like that. So there's lots of things you can play with. There's lots of ingredients to a wedding you can mess around with.
Yes. Also, if magic is inherent in a ritual, then you could really have some shenanigans.
I say, particularly if you've got the player, got to play a character as the priest, they got to get stuff right, and the more stuff they stuff up in the wedding, the harder the political situation is later on, depending on sort of what they've actually vowed to do.
Or you could do something if you wanted a non-magical solution. You make it part of a ceremony that they've got to take a drink. Communion wine or whatever else. You've got to take this drink and then get the long oath exactly right. And if you fail, you have to take the drink again. So it turns into a drinking game.
So we're doing that whilst under fire.
Yes. I love that. I think it's very nice, light-hearted. It something catches a certain type of comedy and a farce, which I would like to play with. I'm not sure why players would appreciate it. They tend to be a bit too serious, but you get the right a con game. It would work really well as a con game. Josh, final thought?
Pretty much what you said. I mean, this is just something that can be just like, here's your characters, here's what you got to do, have at it. It's the perfect 66 adventure right there.
Yes, because it's a good one for cons because you can do pre-gens and have the roles and things like that already sort of set up, so you can work the situation but still leave the players enough space to do things. Okay, so that sounds like it could be the wedding from hell or the best wedding ever, depending on your point of view. Kristen, do you have some thoughts about births, weddings, and funerals from an existing role-playing system?
Yes. Okay, so Glorantha, specifically Hero Quest Glorantha, one of the people on the Gloranthan G+ Society made mention of a very, very complicated but awesome idea where the heroes had to go on a mythical hero quest, literally, because that's actually part of a marriage in Glorantha. Like, to get the person you want, even if they, really want to be married to you, you go on a mythical hero quest. That's a thing. You go into the supernatural plane and you reenact the mythic story of how, your god married his bride, or the bride married the god, take your pick. And that, even transplanted into another universe, just that idea could be very, very interesting, as we've discussed. Things not going right, or things going really right, or unexpectedly could happen.
Yeah, I mean, the Glorantha is a wonderfully rich world. I mean, I know it best from sort of like the RuneQuest side of things, but it's very similar in both incarnations, isn't it? And they do have this wonderful spirit world and spirit things going on, bound spirits and everything. And so I do like the idea that if you're getting married, you have to do something in the spirit plane, because it sort of says, well, naturally, it's important in this world, and the other world is closely tied to us, so you've got to do it in that world as well. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Oh, it is, undoubtedly. It can also be, it can cause some trouble. I mean, what if a player decides to, they are not a part of this particular union, but they decide to step in and take something for themselves, replace an item, or, otherwise manipulate the wedding for political reasons, let's say.
Yeah, you could steal the where the bound spirits are, or something like that, or sort of like send in an extra spirit into the spirit world and into the hero quest. So, there's sort of you could sort of have the sort of like the real world and the hero quest spirit world sort of in acting out of each other and interacting. So there's a big scope there. Josh, you have some thoughts?
The way it was originally being described, the thought occurred to me is, what if so you propose you have to do a fetch quest? So if you're, say, two commoners or two player characters get married, go fetch me the head of said monster here. If it's royalties, go find me the head of Vecna. You have to undergo like a massive quest just to propose,
Do you think the size of the quest is something to do with either how much you love the person or how important you are in the society? If you're a farmhand, do you just have to go to the next village and get half a dozen eggs?
Yeah, I mean, if you're royalty, you can't just go, here's a goblin's head. I fetched it for you. But no, you have to find like the Rod of Eternity or something, because what royal will be caught dead giving their like bride or groom to be a goblin head? No, you give them something important, something that tales will be told about for future generations.
Yeah, and then when you get all the spirit world and that side of things involved, yes, go and bring me the spirit of such and such, the ancestor, the great ancestors. There is lots of things you can tie in. I do like the idea that if you're going to propose, you have to go and do a quest. It makes some interesting role-playing opportunities. Yes, Josh?
Me again. When you're saying about spirits, it also occurs to me, it has been a while since I played this, so I might be wrong, in Werewolf the Forsaken particularly, you go into the spirit realm and you can deliberately manipulate where spirits are to influence the outside world. What if, to, say, make the wedding go smoothly, you have to bring like happiness spirits or
party spirits.
Party spirit. I'm trying to think of the word now. Screw it. Basically, spirits that make sure you're not late. Punctual spirits, stuff like that. You literally have to influence the location. Say people in there as well. You got to influence people's decisions. You can influence people's decisions by influencing the spirits in the spirit realm, because they will reflect directly onto the physical plane.
Mm-hmm. Kristen, do you think the Glorantha sort of spirit side of things very well? Are these sort of ideas which fit into the sort of existing world?
They can. There is a website that I happen to stumble across, because a lot of these things aren't written down officially. Lots of fans have written up, some of the mythos over the years. And so I sat down and I read one of them. It was like Simon Phipps's like Gloranthan, Gloranthan mythos page, and I read a couple of them. And yeah. So much as proposing, was a hero quest, and making sure I'll use the example of the goddess of the earth Arnalda and the storm god Orlanth, being the two biggest gods in Glorantha. Basically, Arnalda is married to some other sun god dude, and Orlanth is like, I want to marry her. What does she do? She says, I'll marry you, but you need to do 3 tasks for me. But when they get married, that gives him the right of rulership. So it's rulership that's coming from her. So by marrying her, it makes him more awesome. But without that, there's nothing. But it's like 3 crazy tasks, and like one of them is setting right the universe after the sun falls out of the sky and gets killed or something. It's like, bring it back. And he's like, yes ma'am, I'm gonna bring it back. And that starts off one of the biggest, the well-known Gloranthan quests, the Lightbringers quests. I'm done now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about I always liked about the setting, is that it did tend to do things on a huge scale. It really had epic gods and mythological gods, and so yeah, making a wedding on a sort of like divine scale, that sounds like fun to me. Okay, we're going to move on. Jay has submitted an idea, but because time zones to Hong Kong are a pain, we're going to have Josh present the idea. So, Josh, would you like to be Jay for a while?
I don't know. I haven't got any cheesecake about. All right, seriously, Funeral of the Blood Mage. A Blood Mage's spells are tied to their body and their flesh. On their death, these bindings on the spells the mage once cast in life begin to unravel. To ensure that the magical energies unleashed are not dangerous, the corpse is drained of blood and then cremated. The removed blood is taken to a secure vault beneath the magician's college, where it is kept until dried. As the entwined magic keeps blood alive, this could take many years, decades even, for particularly powerful mages. The plot hook being, with the accuracy of the silver word, see the blood magic as an abomination. that their neighbours should practice it so freely whips them into a religious fury. Rather than strike out at their larger foe, the Cardinal has commissioned the players to carry out a devious plot. They must assassinate the most powerful mage they can and then steal his blood. This blood will power a divine device which will use the magic in the blood to turn the entire city into a molten crater. Thus, the blood mages will be undone by their own evil act.
What I like about this idea is it's ambiguous whether the characters are actually the good guys or not.
Or whether or not they actually know that they're going to do this. And yeah, you're going to kill an evil blood mage. Yeah, we're going to kill an evil blood mage. What are you going to do with that file? Oh, don't worry about it. You'll find out about that in a week or two.
Yeah, I mean, are the players going to get a bit suspicious when they say, yeah, we need you to kill this evil blood mage. Oh, we need you to drain their blood once you've done it. You know, I mean, you have to sort of lead the players into this slowly, so they're already committed by the time they sort of find out these fine details.
I don't know. All you have to tell the players is if you don't drain the blood, they'll reincarnate in 2d4 days, and you don't want that because he'll come straight after you. He will kill you. And you won't be prepared this time.
Oh yes, false information. That would work perfectly.
It's all well and good until one good sense motive roll reveals he's lying for his bare teeth, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I do like this. Unlike, say, marriages, which are and births, this is the first one we've had about death. I believe yours is as well. Just found out. But yeah, it is all ambiguous whether or not the players are. Well, yeah. Mark, what are your opinions about magic?
Yeah, I was thinking a way you can make the actual adventure part of this quite interesting is to say that blood magic is in fact the only magic. So the players are going into what is essentially the only magical city, and they're up against someone who's got powers that simply they cannot have. So it means they then have to approach it in a very different kind of way, and it makes it gets away from the usual problem I have in a lot of games where the players are the most powerful things in existence. So it means they go into something which is properly bigger than they are. It makes the baddie genuinely scary. So it makes that quite hard. It also helps with the moral bait and switch that if he's doing this big terrifying stuff, then it makes him look like he really is the bad guy. Until you eventually, kill him and take his blood and work out that the evil really is the kind of people that you're actually working for, who suddenly want to kill another couple of 100,000 people when they blow the city up.
Sort of what if the players spend a large amount of time formulating a plan, and they start to get to know these people around their city, and it's like, actually, these people aren't as bad as everyone else makes them out to be. They are just people with something. We don't have it. Doesn't mean they're instantly evil. And the players start questioning themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously naturally, if you say, "Oh, there's magic involving blood," people naturally tend towards thinking evil, and it's a very easy thing to paint them as evil. But maybe they drain the blood for a purpose. Maybe it is very, very powerful, so they guard it. Rather than just chucking the whole body into the hole like you normally would, where it might get stolen. They drain the blood to keep it out of people's hands. It's like radioactive waste. They're keeping it safe. They're keeping everybody safe. And so actually the people hiring the characters are actually the ones going to unleash hell accidentally with all this powerful magic about. So it reminds me of in Ghostbusters, the public official who insists all the ghosts are let loose.
Yes. It's got a very. This has kind of a definite sort of 2-act or 3-act kind of structure where you've got the you've got that kind of moral bent switch. You do this, and suddenly you go, oh, actually, these guys are the bad guys. These people you have to do it. Then you have to suddenly prevent the city being destroyed. If the players decide they want to do that.
Yeah, they can all just take the money. Josh.
Yeah. One of it happens to be the fact that the theocracy of the Silver Word aren't necessarily doing it to kill people. Well, they are doing it to kill people. Aren't necessarily doing it out of absolute hatred. What if they're inherently jealous of these powers that these people seem to have, and they believe that by sacrificing them all, they can spread magic to the whole world. They can't just be contained to this one group of people.
So we're sort of like magical fallout spreading over the land, and sort of, that the land is contaminated with magic, granting other people the power.
That'd be quite a cool thing to have in the game anyway. Even if that isn't what the Silver Word are trying to do, you do actually create this problem. Essentially, this massive rain of blood from people who died in the city, say, acting as fallout.
Yes, you could do the moral bait and switch, actually leave it quite late, until actually it's only once they've destroyed the city that the players really discover the consequences and have to examine their conscience and things like that, and then do they set about undoing it. So in terms of an adventure, it's quite nice because it's a good one because it's a nice and simple start, but it can go in so many different directions. Okay, let's move on from the Blood Mage and to the final one, which is my little entry. Okay, this one is called Funeral for a Stranger. And the characters they're on a road, they're going across some wilderness area, but they know there's a tiny village along the way which does have a tavern for travellers. So they've planned their journey, so they'll stop there and get out of the horrid weather and be able to have a nice bed and some food and things like that. But they get to this remote village called Pondham, but they discover the tavern burnt down a few weeks ago, and there's now nowhere to stay. Luckily, the village priest, Hankel, offers them shelter for the night in the small temple in the village. A very kind thing to do, but there is a condition attached to the hospitality. You see, the mortal remains of one Catherine Leomai are laid out in the church ahead of her funeral in the morning. Catherine was known as Mad Cat in the village, a wizened old woman who was shunned by the villagers. She has no family and no friends. No one is expected to turn up for the funeral, so Hankel has taken care of preparing the body and sorting out her meagre belongings. In doing this, he discovered a worn badge, a worn metal badge, a faded letter, and a medal. Now, the badge is for the insignia of the elite Royal Guard battalion. The medal is the Knight's Cross, the highest military award for bravery, and the letter a citation for Catherine Leomai's acts of her extreme heroism, which led to the award of the medal. Now, no one in the village had any idea of Mad Cat's past, and Hankel believes that someone who has served the nation so well should have some mourners at the funeral. So in return for food and shelter for the night, the priest asked the characters to attend the funeral in honour of Catherine's service. Local custom dictates that this service is held at dawn. So players happily agreed to this. It's shelter for the night, a little bit creepy church, dead body, but it could be far worse. So they settled down for the night. Catherine's body is on the altar, and her altar speaks to the spirit. Her spirit speaks to the character, and she reveals that she's been cursed and murdered by someone in the village. Unless a person of honour finds the murderer before dawn, her spirit will be condemned to oblivion. The characters must now discover the murderer before dawn, but everyone in the village is asleep and they know nothing about the village. So they're sort of like stuck in the middle of the night, they've got to find the murderer before dawn. What do they do? Do they go and wake everybody up? Do they, how do we start conducting a search? So that's the starting point for the players. So, that's, anyone got some ideas on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea. Let's say the idea of the whole is really quite cool. It's a question of how do you sort of start going about investigating it. The first thing to also interrogate is the spirit of Cat herself. I mean, how much does she know? Is she able to give them any kind of idea at all, or did she just eat dinner and then suddenly die, and that's all she really knows about what happened to her? Or was she able to kind of give people a couple of ideas of which way to look?
Yeah, you'd have to give them a starting point. So obviously you can't go, and she can't know exactly who did it, because then it's just a simple matter of, it was Joe Bloggs down the road, go and get him. So so maybe it was poisoned, or maybe that, maybe she picked something up, and opened it, and that was where the curse was, or something along those lines. So yeah, that starting point is, how did she die and what does she know about it?
Yeah, and also the priest as well could give people some kind of feeding in, because if they ask her, so does she have any particular enemies? Is anyone that is actually capable of magic? It's that kind of thing. So he can give you you got kind of a start there, but the real trick to writing it would be to have a starting point that isn't too obvious or isn't too prescriptive. It will send the players kind of straight to the answer. They really need to struggle to find it.
Yes, I think the secret is you're forcing the characters to sort of make a decision about how they approach it, and that's the fun of this adventure. They've almost got this blank slate. What do they do now? So the adventure has to be written to allow them to do that. Kristen, you're pinging.
Yeah. Yes. I was going to say basically. Then you also have to wonder: does the priest know that the spirit is still lingering? Because if he's a priest, shouldn't he, depending on the cosmology of your world, realize that there's an shriven spirit that is still hanging around and doesn't seem completely at peace? Shouldn't that be a little disconcerting? Did he do it? Is the spirit aware of this or not aware of this? Why hasn't
Yeah, I mean, it actually raises some interesting questions, doesn't it? And I mean, maybe that this is all some sort of cover. Maybe the priest did it, so that it's sort of like he's sort of like going through the motions, unaware that actually, he's setting up the people to catch him. Josh, you've got some thoughts.
Yeah. What if the reason that the ghost hasn't appeared to the priest is the priest doesn't believe in ghosts? Well, that's a well-known fact, and the conspirator's like, I can't talk to him. He's just going to disbelieve me away. I'll just fade away, and my story will never get told. So that's why she told the players, because they're from outside of town, not necessarily part of that religion. So they'll have a more open mindset to accepting the fact that, yes, this spirit is talking to them. Of course, in a world where undead exist, anything's possible.
Yeah, it could be as simple as that the priest isn't in the church. There's limited magic, or it may be all to do with honor. Maybe that the priest isn't honourable in the right way, and that it's this is about fulfilling the woman's honor and things like that. So maybe you could tie the magic to that. Or maybe tie it to things in the character's background. Ideally, what you'd want is some of the characters having served in the palace guard or the military and stuff like that, so that there can be some sort of excuse for the spirit speaking to them.
Yeah, it had also occurred to me, the villagers known this lady is just a mad woman for years. Are they even going to care that somebody cursed her? Do the players literally have to start intimidating and interrogating and just driving answers out of these horrible, horrible people?
Yeah, in the middle of the night, they're kicking down people's doors saying, "Where were you? Did you poison the mad old woman?" And they'd say, "Oh, I wish I had," or things like that. Yeah, it could make the situation quite difficult for the players. Though it did occur to me, it would be sort of like if you wanted to do an uplifting, feel-good adventure, you could have a situation where, by the course of their investigations, the whole village realises that actually this woman was a war hero and a really outstanding person, and that her madness and stuff in later life was an effect of that. And the whole village then turns out for a funeral, having the murder been caught. So you could make it a big uplifting, Disney movie moment.
Or a horribly depressing one when nobody helps them and the spirit just at the end of the adventure.
I would say they have to catch the person. I mean, do they have to be killed? I mean, because if the village is going to accept you bring this person to justice, you have to have evidence. Because part of it might well be that she just goes, yeah, it was Jeff. He lives at number 15 Acacia Avenue. He's the one that did it. But the problem is you've got to prove it. Because you can't just kick his door in and kill him.
Yeah, I mean, that poses a very different adventure, doesn't it? Where she says exactly who did it, and then the players go, well, what do we do? He's got to be dead by morning.
It reminds me of a trick I once pulled in one of the old campaigns I played. Basically, we're trying to convince this other werewolf pack that another werewolf pack betrayed them. So we had our wizard cast Zone of Truth. My character quickly asked the question, "Did you or did you not kill that person?" And then the person answered, "Truthfully." And then we ran the hell out of there as if Barney began. Whoops.
Yes. Okay, so that's enough funerals for strangers. So that's birth, marriages, and deaths ideas, therefore. So let's quickly move on to Mark for the pluses and the deltas.
Yeah, sure thing. So obviously this is where we go through and we see what people liked, what people didn't like, and so we can improve the quality of these meetings in the future. So plus points for me. It's nice going first. I like the ideas on the whole, and I think we've got a good set there. We've kind of covered a good moral range, good kind of tonal range as well, from quite light-hearted to quite dark stuff. And it's also great to have Kristen. I think it's probably the first time I've been in one of these meetings with you, so it's great to have you on board and lovely to see some new faces coming into this. And deltas. More new faces would be good. Maybe one or two extra old faces as well, to kind of fill out and give us a couple more ideas. So that's me. I'm going to pass over to Josh. What about you? What was good and what was bad in your view?
There's a few ideas that I really, really want to chuck at my players, particularly yours, Chris. I am going to chuck that at my players in between like big story arcs because I want to watch them suffer. And again, I agree with Mark. It's good to see Kristen back. Hopefully, he'll be back for more sessions. Deltas, I completely and utterly buggered up that intro horribly, and I've still got to do the outro, so there's plenty more time for it to go wrong.
I think you'd like probably take to practicing some to camera sort of beforehand for the.
It's a shame you weren't here last week. I did the outro perfectly.
Yeah, okay.
Chris nodding right there. He agrees.
I believe you. Thousands wouldn't. Chris, what about you?
Yes. Well, yeah. Obviously, great ideas. Obviously, great to have Kristen back as well. Good to have you back as well, Mark. It must be noted. It's 3 or 4 weeks since you've been in the right country and time zone and well. But trying to think of something original to say. Well, I think actually, it's sort of like the ideas are actually quite usable. They wouldn't take a lot of work to develop into proper adventures and things like that. And I particularly like Mark's idea as a con game. I could really see that working as a con game, especially with like the IndieCon crowd, because they would really get into it. Friday night sort of adventure, I think.
Yeah, I'll look at writing that up for IndieCon this year, because it's a little way away, but it'd be nice to go drop in and do that again. Yeah. And so finally, Kristen, your thoughts and feelings. What was good and what was bad of the meeting for you?
Oh wow, it was all good so far from where I'm sitting. I mean, other than Josh buggering up the intro, but that was actually that was still good. All of it was good. I can't think of any deltas whatsoever.
Okay, cool.
And it's really good to be back.
Okay, yeah, it's great. It's great to have you back into this. So, okay, so all round, very good stuff then. So, actually, I've got one little delta for the end because I just realised. Previously, we used to put stuff up on lots of social media and Reddit, for example, and that gave us lots of ideas that we could discuss and rattle around a bit. And we've not done that in a long time. It feels kind of like a little bit of a closed loop, and we're talking amongst ourselves on video rather than kind of engaging with the rest of the community at large. Maybe that's something to be worth looking at. Yes, that is pluses and deltas. So finally, back over to Josh for the outro. He will do a sterling job.
So, thank you for watching. We have been 66. If you want to see more of these videos, feel free to subscribe. The subscribe button will be down there. There'll be a link to the blog where you can see any bit of news 66 and/or articles written by our members. So, from everybody here, thank you and good night.